Welcome back to Andersons Smoke Show. Today I've got 2 racks of baby back ribs and we're going to be using the 2-2-1 method on my Camp Chef Smoke Pro pellet grill. Stick around and see how we do it. Be sure to subscribe to my channel and ring that bell for notifications so that you can keep up with the latest content. Be sure to like the video and write me a comment. Let me know what you think of these baby back ribs with that 2-2-1 method. Now let's get right into it. I picked up these baby back ribs from Costco. I like them from there because you get a 3-pack. I needed a rack for another project, so I'm using 2 today for this 2-2-1 method. Now the first thing that I like to do when I get these ribs is I rinse all of the purge, that's the blood and the juices and everything out of the package, and then I take paper towel and I just pat dry it the best that I possibly can. With baby back ribs, you're always gonna have one side that's nice and thick and one side that's pretty thin. So I like to shave the last 2 ribs or so off, depending how thick they are, because I know that these aren't going to cook nearly at the same rate as the rest. And so I'm gonna go about right here, and I'm just gonna slice that off. We'll save that for something else. And I'm gonna do the same with this rack here. Like I said, we'll set those off to the side. I'll also take my knife, nice sharp knife, and anything, you know, loose, any chunks of fat, anything big and hanging off, I'm going to take the time to trim that off. See a nice big chunk there. Flip these over, check this side. Yeah. These ribs from Costco honestly are trimmed up pretty well, to be honest with you. Now these aren't any competition style. They don't have to be perfectly square cut. I'm a backyard barbecue guy, and that's all I want, is a nice, good rack of ribs. Now these ribs today already came with the membrane pulled off. If you have ribs that have a membrane, and that is the shiny silver skin that runs on the back side of the bones, if you've got those, you're gonna wanna pull that off, because removing that is going to help you achieve the most tender bite possible, and you're gonna get rid of that rubbery, chewy membrane that you truthfully don't wanna eat anyways. Since there isn't a membrane on this, I'm gonna put a link to one of my other videos in case you have ribs that have a membrane and you need to remove them. I'll show you how to do it over there. Now, it's time to apply the binder. Many of you are gonna say, I use mustard as a binder. What are you doing with olive oil? Look, I've used mustard. I like mustard as a binder. I also like to use a little bit of oil. And when I say a little bit, I do mean a little bit. So I take my palm, got a gloved hand here, and I just drizzle a little bit of oil, and then I just take that and I coat both of these racks of ribs with that oil. You don't want too much. You just want to glaze it just a little bit with that oil. It's just going to help that rub stick just like you need it to. Yeah. And today for the rub, I'm gonna be using the Meat Church Honey Hot Hog Barbecue. This is a new one that I just picked up, but I'm looking for a little bit of bite on these ribs, and I think this is gonna give me exactly what I want. And I'm going to give a nice, generous coat. It's a little windy today, so I'm gonna try and be careful here. We'll get this other rack of ribs too. Now I suggest any rub that you use, always taste it first. I've run into an issue in the past where salt content was a little high, and it's probably best, honestly, to always try it so that you know what you're working with. I know this rub here's got a little bit of a bite, and it's gonna go great with how I intend on finishing these ribs. Now that we got the rub applied, I like to take the back side of my hand and just give it a little pat. That way the binder that I use is on this side. I'm not really pulling any of that off, and I'm just making sure that that rub is intact on the surface of the ribs. Now for many of you, this could be your first grilling season. You could be buying your first Camp Chef or your first smoker. Barbecue's really not that intimidating. And you know, everyone's got their own methods. Some people wrap, some people don't wrap. Don't worry about it. Do what you like. Don't worry about what other people think. That's my biggest piece of advice I could give you, because there's really no wrong way. And I know you don't have to put a ton those spices on the bone side, but I like to anyways. It's just an OCD thing. Nice even coats. And once again, we'll take the back side. Back side, we'll make sure that that rub is intact. We'll get these flipped over. I'm gonna toss a little bit more now that that's started to soak in. Just like so. And there was the wind picking up again. And we'll pat one last time. And there's your rack of ribs ready to go in the smoker. We'll let them set here and sweat for a few minutes. Let's go over to the Camp Chef, get that thing fired up. We'll get these in. We've got my Camp Chef Smoke Pro SG24 Wi-Fi. That's what we're gonna be using today for these baby back ribs. I've got some of the charwood pellets with the cherry and the charcoal pellets. We're gonna be using that today because I love cherry with ribs. I've already got the hopper emptied. Let's go ahead and get this thing loaded up. And now that we've got them in, let's get it turned on and set to 235 degrees. We'll flip that power switch. We will hit the center of the button there. We will hit set temp. We are going to say 235 degrees. That's what I like to do my low and slow ribs at. We're gonna go smoke level 10. We'll set that. The startup procedure has begun. You always want to open the lid to create as much airflow as possible to help that fire get started. We'll check in with you once the grill's ready to put the ribs in. All right, the Camp Chef is fired up and it's time to put these ribs down into the smoker, so let's do it. I'm gonna set these racks just like so. Keep them nice and tight like that. Just like so. Keep them centered as much as we can. All right. The ribs are set to 235 degrees. Since we're doing a 2-2-1 method, to explain what that is, that's 2 hours unwrapped, 2 hours wrapped, and 1 hour unwrapped. And at some point during that 1 hour, we're gonna glaze it up with some sauce and let them finish up. So for this 2 hour period, we're gonna keep an eye on it about every 30 to 40 minutes or so, and we're gonna look at the surface of those ribs. If they appear like they're dry, I'm gonna take a spritzer bottle. I'll show you how I do it, and we'll spritz the surface just a little bit to keep the surface moist. But for now, leave the lid closed, give them some time, and we'll see in about a half hour, 45 minutes. All right, we're about an hour in here. The ribs look like they need spritz, so I've got a concoction. It's a 2-to-1 fruit juice to apple cider vinegar. I use pineapple juice for this. You use whatever you want. Orange juice, papaya juice, apple juice, pineapple juice, whatever. Just get a spritzer, 2-to-1 aspect ratio. I like this nice little pump spritzer because I can just get in here and do a quick little spray. I can adjust the nozzle, and that's all we need. That easy. These 2-2-1 baby back ribs are through that first 2 hour period. It's time to pull them out, get them wrapped up, and back into the smoker. Come in here, man, they got some great color in that 2 hour period. I only had to spritz them twice. I showed you that once. Got a little bend to them there, that's nice. Looking great. We'll get these over to my table here. Yeah. All right, it's time to wrap these baby back ribs. I have some heavy duty grilling foil, non-stick stuff, nice long strip like so. I wanna be able to wrap one rack of ribs with one piece of foil with no problems. So, before we get started here, I'm gonna take a little spritz. I'm gonna put a little bit of my spritz in. I like to use some butter and brown sugar with my ribs whenever I wrap them. Some people use honey, some people use maple syrup. I mean, all of that's nice. We're going a little simpler today. We're just doing a little brown sugar and butter, and I'm just spritzing there for a little bit more moisture. I'm gonna take 3 chunks of butter, about that size. I'm gonna set it down in the foil. And we are going to take a few tablespoons, get that nice and soft, brand new brown sugar. Get it down like so. Yeah, just a little bit more. Yeah. Some people run their ribs meat side up, some people run them meat side down. When I'm wrapping, I always run them meat side down because I want all those juices to focus on that meat. When you run a meat side up, these bones actually create like a canopy and the meat actually doesn't sit down in it. Granted, it will be steaming it a little bit. I just rather just run it like so. I'm gonna hit it with a little bit of spritz on top. We're just gonna do a couple little slivers of butter here on top. And we're gonna hit it with a couple tablespoons of brown sugar. Now we wanna be careful. You might wanna trim off any of those sharp edges. You'll see that the drippings will actually dry up and you'll get a nice sharp edge. And what'll happen is you'll poke a hole in your foil. You don't wanna do that. So what I like to do, I'm gonna tuck this foil in. We want it to be nice and tight, but not tight to the point where we're actually tearing the foil. And just like that. We'll walk over and get this back in the smoker so it's out of the way. Carefully lay them down like so. Close the lid. We got 2 hours. We'll see you then. All right, these have been in for about 2 hours wrapped in this 2-2-1 phase. Man, do they look good. Now, since we got quite a bit of pullback on these already and we're getting some separation on these rib bones, they're honestly pretty close to being done. I'm gonna go ahead and sauce them up now, and I'm just gonna sauce up the backside because I don't see these taking too much longer. To go along with that honey hot hog barbecue from Meat Church, I'm using a little bit of peach barbecue sauce from Old Ray's. I'll tell you what, the little sweet and a little bit of heat that we get from the combination of the rubs and these sauces, gonna be fantastic. Now, based off of that separation, you know, probably should have pulled them just a little bit sooner, but to be honest with you, I like my ribs a little bit more on the tender side, so this is gonna suit me just well. If you don't like them that tender and you want to bite off the bone, or you want a very firm bite, you probably need to pull them a little bit sooner out of that wrapped period, but that's okay. All right, got these ribs back over here. Let's get them back onto the smoker, and I'm gonna do my best to grab the rack carefully without breaking it. This one rack is super tender. I'm gonna get that probe out of the way. All right. Now that I've got them back into the smoker, I'm gonna hit them with that peach barbecue. And essentially, we're just gonna let these ribs set up. We want the sauce to thicken, start to glaze, and they are good to go at that point. I don't foresee this taking too long. Probably another 15 minutes at most. All right, let's get this shut. Let it thicken up. All right, let's get these ribs out. All right, so these 2-2-1 baby back ribs are done. They took a little bit less than the 5 hours, and that's all right. You just be sure that you keep an eye on it when you're doing yours. The 2-2-1 is gonna produce a fall off the bone style rib. You can see that here, just based off of how tender they actually are. It will actually fall right off the bone. And this isn't for everybody, but you know, that's one thing that I like to do is try to cater to everyone. So those of you who like those really tender fall off the bone ribs, look at that. That's perfect. We might as well give it a try while we're in here. Those ribs with that Meat Church seasoning and that peach barbecue sauce have the right amount of sweet and heat. They are phenomenal. Those are super tasty, super tender, fall off the bone. Look at that, I can just tear that right off the bone. If you like your ribs fall off the bone, then these baby backs with the 2-2-1 method at 235 degrees might be for you. Give this recipe a try, let me know what you think. Be sure to subscribe so you can follow along to all of the cooks that I got going on this summer. And I'll see you next time at Andersons SmokeShow. Melt in your mouth, not your hands. Well, I guess that's not exactly true. What was that from? That's a candy commercial or something. Oh well, later.